This is Youth Goal webinar free of the C4Youth project, C4Youth Europe project. As we have already mentioned in our two previous webinars, this is a long European funded project, and our aim is to do what we are doing at the moment: connecting, engaging, and empowering youngsters, youth workers, people from all ages. And in order to do so, we are now starting to introduce the different European youth goals. And the youth goal for today is youth goal number 3. And I'm very happy, very honored to have Daniel Wisniewski. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing the surname properly. Sorry for that. Our Polish partners here probably know how to pronounce it better than me. But Daniel, we are very happy to have you here today to be our speaker, our expert for the day, to explain so much from your own personal experience, with your vast personal and professional experience. And I think, Daniel, the idea that we have for the day is that you are going to give us a little bit intro first, no, of your work, your connection, especially with European, the pillar of social rights. That was the idea for today. So first of all, because I want all of you to have a general overview, let me share very quickly my screen. So for the ones joining a little bit later, you can read properly Daniel's name. Apologies for my terrible pronunciation. So as I was saying, this is European Youth Goal 3, focusing on inclusive societies. And here we have the name of our speaker, Daniel Wisniewski, who is the General Secretary of the European Federation of Education Employers. So Daniel, a lot of bunch of expertise in this topic. Really looking forward to hearing from you. And for the ones that want to know what the European Federation of Education for Employers does, you have the QR code here. I can share more details, Daniel, afterwards if you want in our thank you email. But if you want to know exactly what this organization, this fundamental organization does, you can scan the QR code. So having this said, Daniel, let's proceed with you if you want to share. I'm making you co-host, by the way, if you want to share some slides with us, and then I will share again and we will move forward to our conversation. And also a little bit of housekeeping. We are always super happy to have your questions here. And even if we have a Q&A session at the end, in the meantime, if some pivotal question pop up, you can use the chat. Feel free to use the chat. Okay, so Daniel, the floor is yours. Again, thank you very much for joining us today in this very important session.
Okay, now, so first of all, thank you very much for having me, for inviting and actually spending some time with me. I know it's 4 p.m., so it's in the afternoon. You have many of other things to do, and yet you came. I hope that whatever I will say will be interesting for you and most importantly, useful for your work. My name is Daniel. Well, I've been invited here as a speaker to tell a few words about what's the European pillar of social rights and how is that really relevant to you as youth representatives and youth workers. And I can tell you one thing before I even start. Teresa has to be doing something great because it's like the first time I've seen a webinar with 100 participants. So I don't know how you guys do it, but normally when I do a webinar, the participation is much smaller. So something about this must be really great. Well, so I don't know how much you actually heard about European social pillar. And why is it actually important and to what extent this affects you? Everything that we do here in Brussels, especially when it comes to social dimension and everything that we kind of cover when it comes to inclusion, is done in a specific setting. And I will tell you now, how does it really work? Why is it done this way? Why does the Commission do it? What's your role in it? And what you can really do? Yeah, I will try to give you a kind of a political oversight of what is happening, how it really is evolving, and what's your role in it. Okay, so that's the plan for today. Hopefully you will actually enjoy it. So first of all, I'm gonna start with this event. Okay, 4 years ago, in the middle of COVID, as you can see, with all the masks on the faces, some bunch of people met in Porto. Porto is a nice place to meet. They met actually in this, what is called social summit. In this social summit, they actually created a bunch of new rights. This is the bunch of new rights that they've created, okay? It's called European Social Pillar, or Pillar of Social Rights of the European Union. Now, these are all your rights, ladies and gentlemen, okay? So you have the right for gender equality, equal opportunities, secure, adaptable employment, wages, and so on, so on. Work-life balance, and so on, so on. Now, why do you think they did it? Can I make it interactive? Because there's like 100 people, so instead of me just talking, I can maybe ask you a few questions sometimes, okay? Why do you think they came up with it? Okay, just speak up, because I have no time to look at whoever is like raising their hands or stuff like that. So what do you think? Why would European Union create a bunch of social rights? Well, to make the world a better place, no? Yes? Yes, that's for one, but it's actually for political reasons. Okay, so for those of you actually who work in Brussels, you will understand that most of the things that European Union does is not really about making the world a better place. It's actually for political reasons, and that is actually the case. They created these rights in order for them to kind of claim competence, to say, okay, we as a European Union have the right to work on social policies, and that's important because most of those social policies are not European Union competence, okay? European Union cannot tell countries what kind of wages they can do or what kind of employment conditions they can provide. So they've created an entire setup of rights in order to kind of showcase and benchmark and focus and in fact, force member states to do something about this social dimension, okay? Now, next. Have you ever seen this cycle? Yes? It's an important cycle. This is a justification why you should be active and why you should be lobbying. Okay? This cycle actually explains my existence and the existence of all the lobbies here in Brussels. In Brussels, you have around 15,000 lobbies. Why do we exist? Well, we exist because policy drives funding, funding drives lobbying, lobbying drives policy, policy drives funding, okay? So while you are representing a certain interest group, you will be affecting policies that later on will be transferred and transmitted into funding opportunities. And this is why this pillar, trying to go back, can I go back? Yes. This is why this pillar is actually important. Because what is this pillar really? This pillar is about priorities for funding. Priorities for funding for all kinds of different stakeholders. And this entire pillar, therefore, will generate, will show, will lead funding from all kinds of European funds, including the one that is the most useful and important for you, which is Erasmus, but also the one that is, I think, of secondary importance, the European Social Fund, which is bigger than Erasmus, okay? So that's why in every single Erasmus project, when you're writing an Erasmus project, you have the so-called horizontal priorities. What are the horizontal priorities of Erasmus Plus? Well, one of them is social inclusion, right? One of them is about digital, one of them is about green, one about and gender equality and so on. You have these priorities coming from that, okay? So this is the basis for everything else. Any kind of EU funding has to be in accordance with that social pillar, yeah? Now, I already told you that my existence in Brussels, as well as existence of all the interest groups here, is about making sure that the money is going in the right direction. So if you are working nationally and you benefit from EU funding, it's partially because there is a European organizations or bunch of European organizations that are supporting the idea of having strong Erasmus fund that you can benefit from, which, by the way, is now under threat. And I will explain you how it's going to be after 2027. Now, the most important thing that funds this social pillar, right? This is being funded by this, most of it. and that's called European Social Fund, investing in people, right? In there, all kinds of institutions, from ministries, local governments, organizations, NGOs, nationally and European level as well, you can apply for funding for social inclusion. So if you're an NGO working on social inclusion with persons with disabilities, and you receive funding for whatever European funding for all kinds of trainings, infrastructure, capacity, it normally comes from European Social Fund, right? It's not Erasmus, normally it's European Social Fund. Now, second fund that is important for you is Erasmus. Erasmus, as you all know, started as an exchange program at the European Union level. Back then it was European Communities, 1980s, and the first program was called Socrates, right? You don't remember, you're way too young, but Socrates was the first exchange program between university students. Over the years, Erasmus evolved. It evolved into being a more inclusive one, because Socrates was considered elitist, right? It's just for the university people, you know, the brightest, the clever, and so on. So they actually lowered it down and they put it all kinds of different stakeholders in it. Secondary school students, VET students, so VET is the vocational and training students, youth workers, youth, and so on, so on. Suddenly, as of last 10 years, Erasmus was merged into a huge program that funds not only exchanges between universities and schools and so on, it was merged into a big fund that all the NGOs, including your NGOs, probably are living on. I assume that many of you receive EU funding through Erasmus, all kinds of programs. And that is also the second fund that is there to implement this inclusive pillar and this social pillar, okay? Now, I told you about horizontal priorities. These are the horizontal priorities, you know, EU citizenship, social inclusion, digital, and green, right? This is every single project that you're writing, you will have to now justify why and how you are in accordance to those priorities. Later on, of course, there's issues like gender equality and so on and so on. You will have to be writing and justifying why and how your project fulfills these priorities. So again, I'm trying to show you the link between the pillar of social rights and the funding that you benefit from. And I will show you also now the evolution of that funding and the evolution of that pillar. So you will, as youth workers and youth representatives, you can understand what are the trends in front of you, what you need to do in the future in order to make sure that the funding that you have been receiving will continue. Because, by the way, I have bad news, but that's at the end. European Labour Authority. Anyone here from Slovakia? No? Nobody from Bratislava? Well, funny story is that ELA is actually created in Bratislava. So if you are from Slovakia, it's a good place to work. It's an agency, which means that you can get some tax-free employment and good salary. And it's pretty cool. So they just established it. So they have many jobs opening. So I do invite you to apply. Now, why did they create ELA? Well, they want to work on labor conditions. Labor conditions, which, by the way, again, is not a competence of European Union, but the big French and German people decided that, okay, those poor Polish and Romanians are too cheap, so we need to create an authority to make sure that their cost of employment increases. And so they created ELA, and this is supposed to prevent what is called working conditions and salary competition. Because in Eastern Europe, you have a competition, well, the salaries are significantly lower than in Western Europe. Therefore, industry is moving east, and therefore Western European countries are being somehow, targeted by it. So they actually have a negative impact. And now, it's also part of the social pillar, because ELA is responsible also for that. Okay, they are supposed to be implementing that social pillar as well. And it's a new agency, as I told you. That agency is just being constructed in Bratislava. I think it exists for 2 years tops, maybe 1 year even, a bit shorter. Well, this I did show you already. Now, I told you that all this started in Portugal in 2021, right? Why in 2021? Well, 2021 was an important year, not because, I was dying out of COVID, but that's also the case, but also because that was the beginning of the last multi-annual financial framework. What is the multi-annual financial framework? Anyone? Well, Teresa knows, I'm sure. Anyone? Huh? It's the money. Bottom line. It's the EU budget for 7 years. Okay, so EU budget, every 7 years, they have to prepare a multi-annual financial framework in which we all operate. And of course, the budget, well, the construction of the budget is such that there's certain money that is directly given to European Union from the member states, and there's some money that European Commission acquires by itself. What is this money? Well, from customs. So every time you're buying an Apple computer, right, you do pay in their price, you pay customs. And by the way, this customs is not given to your state. So if you're buying it in Spain, it's not going to your Spanish tax authorities. It's staying with European Commission. And that's called own resources. So in this multi-annual financial framework, in 2021, there was the beginning of this new thing, right? And so they launched the pillar at the beginning of the new multi-annual financial framework. And now, just next month, or in 2 months, is it? In 2 months, they are going to run another summit in Porto to talk about the new pillar and the new inclusion policies. And why are they doing it? Well, because first of all, they need to see, okay, what worked, what didn't, how can we really do it better? But most importantly, the situation has changed. In 2021, we were all in COVID, locked. Well, we were coming out of COVID already. But what happened now is this. This happened last week. What is it? That's a summit, no? There are some important people here. You see Macron, you see the Prime Minister of Britain, you see Zelensky, you see Scholz. Yes, go for it.
I think it was a summit that was organized after the US withdrew support to Ukraine.
Yes. And what does it really mean for the Europeans?
I think, sorry.
I think it was an important sign to Europe that Europe holds together in times of like this. As in times Trump is doing things like this and leaving Europe behind, that Europe unites.
Yeah, so the bottom line is Europe is in trouble. Okay, Trump says, you've been benefiting from my security. I am no longer willing to pay for it. So you guys have to pay for it yourself. And these last 2 summits, one in London, one in Paris, were to kind of decide that after all those years where we did not have to spend money on military, now we actually do have to. And so they decided in those 2 summits that they will spend 800 billion euro on army, on the soldiers, in order to protect ourselves. Because as Marco Rubio said, the Uncle Sam is gone and he will no longer be a loser. That's what he said in the Munich conference a month ago or so. Anyway, so because of that, I told you I'm coming with bad news, right? But the bad news is in that summit, they will have to deliver this with much less money. And that's bad news. That's bad news for all of us, education, youth, because there will be less money for us. There will be less money for exchanges. There will be less money for mobility schemes. And I am even gonna tell it stronger for you. There's rumors in the corridors of Brussels that Erasmus might be closed. Now, how it's gonna be? I can tell you what I've heard. Now, EU money is more or less the same. There's a change, of course, because right now the EU is planning to take another common debt, which will be another COVID fund. They want to spend that on the military and so on and so on. But the budget is smaller. And so in that, this is an invitation to Porto Summit, which I've received. In there, we will be discussing what should be the priorities. Most likely, we will have to narrow it down. So there won't be probably 20. We will not change it, but the funding streams will go directly to certain things and not that much to everything else. And that's very important for you to know. Now, what's important, that was the budget for 2021, 2027. And right now in Brussels, informally, they are already discussing the budget for 2027 and 2034. Okay? We don't know it yet. Their first announcement about this budget will be in September, October. We have leaks, and that's why I can tell you that, well, the money for Erasmus will be different. It may stay more or less the same, but it will be governed differently. And the way it will be governed is this. They will merge Erasmus with Solidarity Corps, first of all, and they will link it to the Union of Skills. The Union of Skills was announced last week. This lovely lady from Romania, her name is Roxana Mințatu. She is the vice president of the commission. And Roxana has just told us that
Are you able to listen to Daniel?
No, not anymore.
No, I think we lost him for a moment. Okay, so in the meantime, I want to say that I know that some participants were waiting. We have experienced a technical issue and meeting participants. We have reached 100, which is great. But there is a technical issue with the Zoom. So I know that some of your organizations, there are people that are trying to join. We are deeply sorry, but if we try to fix this, we need to stop the webinar, we need to stop the meeting, and we need to send you guys a new Zoom link to join. So we have decided, deeply sorry, not to do this, continue with the webinar, okay? We are recording the webinar, we will send you everything, but just for you to know, because I know some people were panicking, very sorry, this is what happened. So we experienced this technical issue. Daniel, I think you are back, isn't it? I was seeing your face somewhere.
Back.
Wonderful. Okay, the floor is yours
back,
again.
But I was about to make a strong statement.
Oh, okay. Well, continue with the Union of Skills.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Are you still listening?
Yes, yes, we are.
I hope I'm not boring you to death. But
no. Union of Skills is super engaging. I mean, this is new material.
So look, the Union of Skills is linking everything. Education now will become a means to an end. Erasmus is therefore becoming a means to an end to create the Union of Skills. I asked you a question before we stopped recording, and before we actually lost connection. Why do they call it fifth fundamental freedom in the internal market? Well, the reason for it is because internal market is an exclusive competence of the European Union. Okay? Everything that happens in the internal market is decided in Brussels. It's not decided by your governments. Okay, and that is important because they want to claim competence in education and in vocational training and in non-formal learning. So they want to have the right to impact curricula. They want to be impacting education, and they will link it to the internal market in order to claim that competence. Okay, remember that it's always a fight for power, right, between governments and the EU. And that's why they established this Union of Skills. And the thing is, with Erasmus, normally it will be linked to that, to the Union of Skills. So Erasmus will exist, and most likely it will even be called Erasmus. Why? Because it's the biggest brand the European Union has. If you are not the EU bureaucrat like me, what would be the 2 free benefits that you as an average citizen see from the European Union? Any direct, impactful.
And I guess we lost it again.
Yes. Apologies for that. Let's see if Daniel is able to reconnect again. In any case, in the meantime, because we were talking about union of skills, I highly encourage all of you, just Google it, read the document. It's a very short document, but it gives a very detailed guideline, of the extent to which all these new skills are going to be considered for the next, multi-annual financial framework and so on, and the connection. Okay, Daniel, you are back. I'm seeing you.
Okay.
Okay.
I changed my connection because apparently there is a problem with it. Anyway,
No worries.
so the bottom line is this is the new governing structure that will be the union of skills, and everything of this will be actually linked to it. I'm not going to talk about union of skills because you would have to invite me again. I would need another 45 minutes to explain it to you what it is. Okay. But I want to show you this photo. These are the key stakeholders in education. You have school leaders here, students, you have non-formal learning, you have trade unions, and and this guy on the left, that's me. And in the middle, we have this meeting with Ms. Mainzat. She met us first because she needed to tell us bad news. And so she met us first. And in fact, we were not very happy about this meeting because what she told us is, look, guys, as of now, the education sector and to some extent youth will be subordinated to the creation of skills. And therefore, it is the skills and the labor market and the private companies that will determine what will be the priorities for youth policies, for skills development, for education. Okay? And that's very important. Because as of now, it will be the labor market that will be telling you the priorities, right? So look, this entire thing of social rights, as well as all your projects in Erasmus, will be determined one way or another by priorities designed by the labor market players. Employers, trade unions, and so on and so on. That's important because it won't be as free as it was before. Yeah? It will be different. It will be more economic, I would say. So I am finishing now. What you must do. First of all, you need to participate. Second of all, you need to advocate and you need to affect policy. If you want to be defending Erasmus and its independence from economic governance, you need to speak up about it. And now is the moment. There is a consultation right now being open. That's an online consultation. Everybody can comment on it. And please do. This bunch of people here, we are trying to defend Erasmus. We're trying to say, look, education has a bigger value. Youth has a bigger value than just economic skills. We need to be independent. Otherwise, we will be just part of, these little tribes working for the economy. But because right now we are all about competitive Europe, and they want to merge this entire governing structure to have also more power as European Union, they decided to do it this way. But you have the voice. You can actually do that. There's lots of consultations right now, and one of them is on Erasmus. I think it's until the end of May. So please speak up, say to these people, okay, this is what we want. And that's it, really. If you have any questions, I was trying to be I tried to show you what's behind the curtains. I hope that was useful to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Very comprehensive. And I think, you are bringing us, your first experience, your own personal experience, observing how this shift is taking place, with all these, union of skills, how, the market is going to determine, what are the real needs of the educational system, and how this is also connected with, the core of this webinar, which is youth goal number 3, inclusive societies. What do we understand by inclusion and what is the role of education? So, as I mentioned we always prepare a few questions for our guest speakers, and it's not going to be different without you. So I'm going now to share my screen, and very shortly we can have now this conversation, and later on let's open the floor because oh my goodness, we have so many comments in the chat, super engaging comments, good critical analysis from many different, participants. So definitely, I'm reading to them now very quickly, but we will address some of these comments, and you will also have the opportunity to interact with Daniel. But in the meantime, let's just check the questions that we have prepared for you. So I'm going to stop sharing your screen, Daniel, in order to share mine. So as you were seeing, let me go very quickly through the presentation. To some extent, I would say that you, Daniel, have already addressed this question. No, it's this interlink, no, between the European Pillar of Social Rights and youth inclusion. But very quickly, we can give like a catch up for the participants because I know some people were joining after you started talking. So, given your pivotal and your very lucky role, no, as Secretary General at the European Federation of Education Employers, how do you see this European Pillar of Social Rights? How does the pillar support youth inclusion in education? And because this webinar also tries to reach youngsters experiencing disadvantage, how this pillar is supporting those youngsters facing barriers to accessing quality education. So how we triangulate, no, these three core elements, no, the pillar, education, and inclusion.
It's a little bit what I've said. But so before I answer, I wanted to mention one more thing. In the Union of Skills, one important element is that right now private companies will also have access to Erasmus and ESF.
Okay.
And that was not the case. It's something new with the labor element. So what I'm trying to tell you is there will be more competition as well, because there will be now private companies as well entering into this. And therefore, you will have to start building alliances with private companies, including tech companies, to do projects in the future. That's very important, because you all probably live with the use of Erasmus and ESF. So it's important that you start building contacts there as well. Now, answering your question, well, youth inclusion and the pillar, they are completely linked. And the way I tried to show it to you is that the pillar, the 20 rights that is stipulated there, that is the main direction where the money flows. So all the money that there is for the Social Europe programs, either it's an ESF or Erasmus, they have to be linked with those 20 elements. And they have to be addressing challenges related to those. So, as I told you, in Erasmus, you have all the priorities. And those priorities are not given by God. They are given by politicians who are saying, okay, our money that we have the right to disseminate is actually going into that direction. And so you, as beneficiaries of this money within your projects, have to then justify how these projects address these 20 elements. And that's finally what I want to say. That's why it's so important that you guys work on policy. Because ultimately, if you're present there, you can affect those. And the reason why there is 20 rights and the reason why it's such a Christmas tree that everybody gets a piece is because all the interest groups come to this Porto Summit and they say, I want this and I am happy about this. And that's important as well. And so we have to create a huge document in which everybody gets a bit. Okay? And as a result, these priorities later on guide this funding and they guide your work, because you will have to be working on those things. Otherwise, you won't get the funding.
Okay. No, but you just mentioned this political element, not to be present, understanding what youth inclusion it's about specifically, but also being aware of the political dimension, how important this is to have a real say in that sense. And I think, Daniel, this connects to my second question, and also more, let's say, to your role as someone who has a clear expertise on educational institutions, educational systems, no? I'm going to make this small. So, topic, creating inclusive educational systems. So again, this massive experience you bring, let's bring this to more practical steps. So what steps can education systems take to better suppose youngsters experiencing marginalized situations and create these inclusive environments to integrate them with their specific needs? They're coming from very concrete backgrounds.
Look, I'm reading your question, and to be honest, I'm the last person to say this. No, I'm pretty serious. Solutions for educational systems, they need to be bottom up. The entire problem with EU funding is actually that we pretend that we know.
Yeah.
And the problem is that top down, we really don't know what's the situation in I don't know, in Romania, what's the situation in Hungary, what's the situation in Westphalia, so in Germany. Germany has 16 different levels, systems of education. Spain has 17. So each of them has its own local, is it 17? 17, I think.
17, we have 17.
Yeah. Belgium has 3, right? So look, you need to tell us. That's the thing. It's like, what can we do? No, our job is to guide funding in the right place. But it's actually the grassroots. It's you that have to tell us, look, we need it for this, or we need it for that. And it's, a European bubble bureaucrat like me is the last person that should be like answering this question, because I honestly do not know what are your specific conditions. Europe is not cohesive. Europe is very different. There is a division between north and south, east and west, rural and city. I mean, and it's in fact increasing. So the only way for us to actually make use of this money, because the money is pretty significant, is actually to listen to you and say, well, and actually listen to you instead of telling you should do this.
Yeah.
So because I'm kindly excusing myself from answering this question, if it's okay.
Okay, let's move to the next one. But you just mentioned something very important, no? Which is also part of the conversation many times, the gap, no? Between what's happening at the more institutional level, more bubble level, allow me to use this word, indeed, and what is happening real on the grassroots, and the fragmentation, 17 different autonomous systems, educational systems in my home country, Spain, 3 in Belgium, 16 in Germany. I don't know the other countries that are joining us today. So there is room for, to create a real conversation, no? My question, I'm just launching this question. You don't need to answer, Daniel, but it's, do we really want to have this conversation many times? Because probably this is going to change a bit of our mindset, no? And the way we work. Anyways, let's move to the next question, because I know there are several questions on the group, on the chat group, and people want to talk to you. So, very quickly, youth employment and social rights. I shared this question with you before, Daniel. I'm going to read it now for our participants. So, what steps, what measures can be implemented to improve the transition from education to employment for youth in situations of disadvantage, ensuring that they have equal opportunities in the labor market? I think this is a very hot topic at the moment, and we have been talking about this recently in Brussels, no? Trainerships and there are so many opportunities, but do they reach the people that need to be reached to? So I'm asking this to you.
But again, so look, I can tell you what has been done.
Okay.
But again, you will have to tell me whether it actually is useful. So at the European Union level, what has been done, and look, I'm here for like 15 years now.
Wow.
You probably don't remember, many of you, do you guys remember the last economic crisis, 2008, 2010, 2012 in Europe? So the last economic crisis really messed up our labor market, right? In many countries, the youth unemployment was 50% and more, Greece, Spain, and so on. We are all in public debt. In most countries, most European countries are in huge public debt, and the labor market was really bad. I remember when I was entering to the labor market, I needed to do like 4 internships before I actually got hired. The main problem back then was that the employers were not really willing to hire people because on the one hand, the labor market was highly regulated. So if you hire someone, you could not really fire them. And if you fire them, you have to pay lots of money. So that actually prevented the employers from hiring people. And that actually contributed to the problem of youth unemployment. Then the European Commission did something which actually was very good. They decided to take that cost on European funds. So what does it mean? Suddenly they established programs for internships, for entrepreneurs, for young people, for allowing you to do an internship being paid by European money that the employer didn't have to pay to you. And that really, that was originating from what is called youth guarantee. So
Yes.
making sure that everybody who is I don't know what youth now is, it's below 24, I think. So everybody who is below 24 has to be either in education or in employment. And on the basis of that, they created all kinds of funding schemes for you to benefit in order to access employment. So in many organizations here in Brussels as well, we offer internship programs that provide funding from EU funds. And that allows us to see, okay, this person is good, this person is worth hiring, and we don't have to bear that cost. And in fact, that was one of those actions of European Union which actually has been very successful. And that was an added value. So it originates from the youth guarantee, and it led to the establishment of Erasmus-based internship programs that are led normally by your chambers of commerce. They are the ones that distribute this funding. Okay, so this youth unemployment thing has been addressed. It's now better. Now we in fact have bigger problems with skills shortages, and that my view on it is that European policies and this fact that we have EU funding your initial professional experiences is a positive development. Now the question to you is, does it really reach the people that it should reach? But that's again, a person from Brussels cannot really answer that. You have to tell us whether it's actually there and whether it is working. We on our policy front, what we did, we provided funding and kind of allowed this to happen, improved Erasmus for vocational training as well, created the vocational exchanges for teachers, for youth, for entrepreneurs. All this is available and is run by chambers of commerce. But again, it has to be whether it actually reaches people that it should reach, you have to tell us. And in fact, this should be an ongoing conversation of how we should improve it,
Yes.
because obviously resources are scarce.
Fully agree. Fully agree. Okay, we have some hand raised by Paloma, and I think it's probably time to open the conversation. Daniel, how do you feel about that? That we start, addressing some questions. You're muted, Daniel.
I muted myself because I see Paloma wanted to speak.
Okay, okay.
I am very open to any kind of piercing
Wonderful,
questions. Do not
wonderful.
hesitate.
Lovely. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you. So, Paloma, if you have a question, I think now it's the time that we start opening the floor to our participants. Feel free.
Can you actually hear me? Because I have the headset on, so I don't know if
We can
you are
hear
able to
you,
hear me.
Paloma. We can.
Okay. So thank you very much, both Teresa for conducting the moderation, Daniel for all your thoughts and inputs on it. I don't have a question. It's more a comment following us on our previous question about whether all these opportunities that has been created, that of course we can and we should keep thinking and brainstorming on how can we improve them and how can we bring innovation to them and new ones, so actually they are more available and accessible for everybody. The question of whether they really reach the people that do need it the most is a question. I mean, the answer clearly is not always. But I think that we should, all of us who are working in the youth sector, who have established youth organizations, we should take a little bit the lead and the responsibility to make sure that it's our work who does work as a bridge between what's happening in Europe and the people that we are really reaching on the ground. So we make sure that part of our job is to get always informed through this kind of projects or many others that are available of what is happening actually in Europe. How is it available for people on the ground, for our youngsters in each one of our local communities, in each one of our countries? So we can be the ones, we that we are on the ecosystem, we can be the ones transferring this knowledge to them and giving them the opportunity. I think that this is really the most direct way of achieving it. Because indeed, young people, information is there. It's available. The European Commission do that, like, do make lots of efforts for people to get involved and informed. But it's true that, like, not every youngsters across Europe, especially those ones facing the most disadvantaged situations, know where to knock or know where to get this information. So it's really our role to make it accessible to them. Voila, that was a little bit my comment to follow up, and then we can open the floor for everybody.
Yes, thank you very much, Paloma. Fully aware, fully agree with you, and the information is there about how we, create this bridge, connecting with those that probably for some reasons don't know that the information is available and these opportunities are available. And I think, it's our role, and as Daniel was saying, that we that are more present at the grassroots, I think we have this responsibility, and we also have the tools to achieve this. And 100 people connected here today, I think we can do a lot in that sense. So following Paloma's comment and following, this conversation that we just had now with Daniel and, his previous presentation of the pivotal role of the pillar of social rights, I think now it's the time to open the floor. I'm seeing several comments. I want to say thank you very much, because I think that Laura from Alba Iglesia has shared with all of us the link to the Union of Skills. Please feel free to click, because you can find here the latest updated information about the Union of Skills. And I would say that the floor is yours for all of you. And now is the time, to go deeper with the conversation and ask any questions, any comments you have for Daniel. And if you don't want to talk, it's fine. Maybe you are in a busy moment now. Feel free to use the chat. Okay, I'm going now to revise some of the comments indeed, because this is quite long. Oh my goodness. Okay, 1 second, 1 second. Yes, several comments from Laura. Thank you very much, Laura. And we were having Mr. Chafar from Padilla Association in Tunisia was talking about, the role of global wealth, the different, imbalance and inequalities. And let me just read. I'm checking out some of the general comments. Thank you very much. Okay, some comments again. How does the C4Youth project? Okay, there is a comment from Mr. Chafar that indeed was connecting with some of the comments, extra comments I prepared for Daniel. So I'm going to read the comment, Mr. Chafar, if this is okay with you. Okay, your question. So Daniel, for you to know, Mr. Chafar is coming from Padilla Association. They are based in Tunisia, and they are mentioning the following. How does our project, C4Youth project, ensure that the voices of disadvantaged youth are genuinely here and integrated in the European policies? I would amplify this question, and I would say how projects like the ones financed, KA2 projects, KA3, Erasmus founded projects really serve for this goal, to really genuinely hear and integrate the voices of youth, disadvantaged youth, into the more general European policy-making process.
Okay, well, they do contribute. Look, they contribute greatly. It's very important that you do this, and it's very important that you're beyond the project, because projects are means to an end. And of course, in those meetings that you organize, first of all, of course, you get informed, you exchange, you can exchange views, but it's very important that you also create common statements not only in written, that you run all kinds of campaigns. When I tell you, okay, go and fill in the consultation on Erasmus, everybody can do it. Okay, you can just drop me a link, and you can organize the coordinated action from your respective organizations doing that, and it's part of your citizen right to do this. So this kind of organizations like Youth Proactive and also many others, they actually play a role in here because they can be your interlocutor, very difficult word, your bypassing belt, to have your voice raised and heard. But to do that, you need to also use this kind of opportunities in those meetings to agree on a common letter, on a common statement, and even strengthen that with what I mentioned, a mass campaign of answering to those consultations. I'm really not kidding when I'm saying Erasmus is under threat. And Erasmus will be now, let's say, private sector organizations and private companies will now be let into it. It is actually happening. And within our education sector, we try to prevent it. But of course, on the youth front, you probably should also do that. Because ultimately, you have two ways to approach it. Is either you start building alliances with private companies that are interested in that funding, and they are interested in it because they want to do what is called work-based learning.
Yeah.
So they want to get funding to train their future staff, right? And you either have to become part of it so you can work with them, or you should do both. You should try to save Erasmus as it is, and if it fails, have the alliances ready to be working with companies that want to do this. And then your organizations can bring those disadvantaged youth to those companies and fund their training inside those companies. So it's not necessarily that's a bad idea, but I think it's important that when you meet here at Youth Proactive, you agree what you want to do, whether you want to do one, second, or both, and you actually get prepared for what's coming, because what's coming is a big change. The entire governance structure of EU funding when it comes to social fund and Erasmus is going to change. There will be less money, and it will be spent differently than it was. And it's going to happen as of 2028, right?
Okay.
Because the current framework is until 2027. As of 2028, so you still have 3 years to prepare, but it's very important that you participate in those meetings and you understand where the trend is heading.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. Yes. No, definitely, the MFF is finishing in 2 years now, and we need to get ready. You are more than right. Okay, more questions. We have extra 5 minutes before we conclude this webinar. So really, it's your time to ask any question, write down any question. Okay, in the meantime, if you are thinking of some of the questions, there is something that we are always very keen to ask you as an immense favor for all the organizers of these webinars. And this was one of the extra questions I prepared for you, Daniel, but I think somehow has been addressed by Mr. Jafar in his question. So we always create an evaluation survey that I encourage all the presents now to scan and fill. I will be sending this later on with a edited recording of this webinar. However, now if you have 5 minutes, even less, please, it would be wonderful if you can scan the QR code and answer some of the questions that are serving us to improve the structure and the ultimate goal of these webinars, which is to engage, connect, and empower European youngsters and beyond. And I'm checking now. Maybe we have questions in the chat. Let's check very quickly. Okay, thanks everyone, Gina. Okay, thank you, Gina. Okay, so if we don't have more questions, I think that this has been a very engaging conversation, Daniel. You have brought us, I would say, very clear statements, about what is the future, how we need to be prepared, for this change in the multi-annual financial framework starting in 2028. And I think that it has touched me very, very strongly, when you say that there are many things that we really need to do more at the grassroots level, to bring our voices back to this more institutional level, that there is this gap. We need to be aware, that there is a gap in terms of, knowing what are the real specific needs, of the different youngsters, depending where they are based. And I think that we need to raise our level of responsibility as organizations, being part of this C4Youth project. It's a project for European youth, and we need to be more aware, no, and mindful of what are the needs of the young people that we are working with on a daily basis. So I hope you have scanned the QR code. I'm stopping now sharing my screen. So if there are no more questions, on behalf of the C4Youth members, partners of the consortium, on behalf of Youth Proactive and myself, Daniel, thank you very much for your time, for your wise words, for all the experience that you have brought today into, this this space of sharing. And yeah, until the next time we met. And thank you very much to all of you being present today. And again, I really would like to deeply apologize for the ones that were waiting in the waiting room. We experienced this technical issue. Anyways, you will receive the recording, you will receive all the follow-up of this webinar, and you are more than welcome to continue participating in our next webinar, which is taking place on the 27th of March at 4 p.m. I think it's a Thursday, but you will hear from us, no doubt. So thank you very much, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot for having me, and thank you for your patience. I hope I didn't break too many walls though. All right.
No, it's been very insightful, and very happy to see all of you. And wishing you a lovely afternoon, evening, depending of your time zone, where you are based in the EU or anywhere else. And until the next time. And thank you very much for being part of this insightful conversation, as always.